This video is for the Class 8 activity around estimation for Gold Belt. The idea here is we want to try to figure out as professional software developers, how do we do estimates? How do we do them better and make sure that we're providing information that business stakeholders are going to need to make good decisions. Objective one is the one I want to talk about in this video. So definitely take a moment and pause the video if you haven't done your research. I want you to do research on these three objectives in particular before you watch the rest of this video. So if you haven't done your own research yet, go ahead and pause this video and come back. I'll wait. All right, you're done researching. I want to specifically talk about objective one because I've found that the information that's out there on the internet is insufficient to be able to answer the question I'm asking. Objectives 2 and 3, the research you did is probably sufficient. There's a lot of good information to answer those questions, but number one is the one where, again, the information is just lacking, which is very unfortunate. That's a new circumstance that's happened. We used to have a lot of information about this about 10, 15 years ago, and for whatever reason, that information is being suppressed. I have my suspicions why, but I won't go in there for today. We want to learn about estimating quickly based on size. So industry experts recommend that we size based on relative size rather than effort, duration, or risk, and that we size very quickly. So the request is perform research to determine why we should use size quickly based on relative size. What you've likely researched is the recommendations are probably based on the size of the work that you need to do. And this is wrong. This is not what estimating based on size is. I'm saying use relative size of the thing itself rather than effort or duration or risk. So we're not using the size of the work. We're not saying how long it's going to take you. How big is the task? How much code do you need to write? How many tests do you need to write? How many database objects? That's the wrong way to think about this. I'm saying, and experts are telling you this as well, we should use the relative size of the work itself, of the thing itself we want to build. So let's take an example. Let's say we need to build a login page. Okay, so a login page, we're going to need a username field, and we're going to need a password field. Maybe we need a remember me checkbox. So that is a couple of fields and a form that does something. I am not worried about the back end side of things. I'm not even worried about the front end code for this. I'm worried about what this thing is, what it looks like by itself. So we're talking about a couple of fields and a button that does something. And then it's going to redirect. So that's one thing. Now let's compare that to something else. Let's do a contact us form. So contact us form, maybe it has a field for the person that's submitting the information. It maybe has a free text field. Okay, that's different. Free text field for whatever they want to type in. Maybe it's got a drop down list that says what kind of contact this is. Are we asking for support? Are we saying that there's a problem with the site? Do we want sales information? What is the kind of contact? And then we're going to submit something that then goes back and posts something out. We're not doing a redirect. So not thinking about any of the code in and of itself, not the front end code, not the back end code, not the database objects, none of that. Just look at those two things. How roughly bigger or smaller are one than the other? I would argue they're probably pretty close to the same. Yes, the contact us field form doesn't have or it has more fields, but it's not doing a redirect at the end, and it's not doing a whole bunch of validation. Whereas the login form, we have to make sure that the information matches, and we're going to redirect at the end of it, but it's got fewer fields. So those are roughly about the same size. Are they a 1? Are they a 3? I don't know. We'll have to talk about that as a team and figure out how do we size those things relative to all the rest of the work that we need to do. But the idea is we want to size based on the thing itself, on the business concepts, on the story, on the feature. We're not sizing based on the work we need to do. That is the wrong way to think about this. That's what's being suggested with relative size. So the question is, why should we do that? That logically might make no sense. Why would we want to size something based on how big it is without thinking about the code at all, without thinking about the database objects, et cetera, et cetera? This is what the internet doesn't seem to be able to provide. So I'm going to provide the answer for you. Ready? Here we go. So there's a couple of reasons. The first is, and this is probably not the one that wins the day, but I think it's an important reason. If you size based on how big something is without the technical knowledge, you can have everyone on the team size well. You don't need somebody, let's say you've got a new developer or a new tester, they don't have to spend 6 weeks or 6 months learning the code and the systems to be able to provide good estimation. They can provide estimation day one as long as it's a good user story, as long as you have a good dialogue as a team and work with your product owner and your business analyst to understand what this thing is in the first place. Everyone is able to contribute equally in the sizing. So that's, again, it's not the argument that's going to win the day, but it's a pretty good argument. The second reason, and this is really the most important reason, is sizing based on the actual size of the thing rather than the effort or the duration that it's going to take is way faster. I have to do a lot less thinking. I have to do a lot less analysis. I have to do a lot less contemplating and designing in my head. I don't have to worry about any of that. And as it turns out, and there are a number of studies that back this up, as it turns out, sizing based on how big something is from a business perspective or a UI perspective or a functional perspective turns out to be no more or less accurate than sizing based on effort or duration or something more complex. So all those other complex ways of estimating, it turns out they're no better or worse than sizing based on how big the thing is just from a functional perspective. The sizing effort, or the way we size, doesn't result in different sizes, different accuracies, then it doesn't matter which one we pick. We can pick any arbitrary mechanism for sizing that we want. They all turn out to basically result in the same accuracy. So why wouldn't you go with the thing that takes the least amount of time? That's this. So that's the reason that we size based on relative size of something, on how big it is from a user perspective, how big it is from a business perspective, from a functional perspective. We are not looking at the stored procedures that we have to create or the entity framework objects. We're not looking at the controllers that we have to create or the view components or the React components. None of that matters for sizing. None of that matters. Get that out of your head. It's hard to do because as software engineers, we think, we design in those terms, and that is good to do. Those do matter when we get to implementation. But for sizing, thinking in those terms slows us down and does not improve our accuracy at all. And again, study after study has demonstrated this to be true. So that is ultimately the reason that we want to size based on relative size. It comes down to it's way faster to do. It's easier for new people to be able to join the team and size right away. They don't have to learn anything. And it's just as accurate as any other mechanism for sizing. So I hope that helps. Definitely take a look at the rest of your notes for Objective 2 and Objective 3. Do look into Objective 4. Think through some of these situations. Think through some of these questions. These are really going to test whether or not you've grasped a lot of these concepts around estimation. These are really, really good questions to make sure you can answer on your own. So that's it. I hope this all makes sense. Reach out as always if you ever need anything and have any questions. Good luck.